Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Making Awesome podcast. This number 15, I believe. Today, we will be talking about patents and the 3D printing industry. I'm Tad, got Grant, Thomas, and our guest today, David, who will be talking to us about patents in this crazy industry that we're in. This is a weird industry in the way that it handles patents, right?
Yes.
I feel like what would be good is let's hello, David. Do you want to, this is your first time on this podcast. I think it
Tell
would
us
be good
about
that
yourself.
yeah, I'd like to know what your history is with 3D printing and being, in doing patents with so I'm just curious as to what that looks
tell
like.
us a little bit about yourself first before we get deep into the friggin' weeds here, Tad.
I'm sorry. Straight off the diving board.
Yeah, what diving board, man? We're just friggin' going for it.
You just walk right off this ship.
I guess that's my cue. My name is David Stein. I've been a patent attorney for a long time. So my background is really strange because I started studying biology and life sciences. I have a bachelor's in biology from a long time ago. I did the entire pre-med track before deciding I didn't want to go to med school. Instead, I went to law school. I started studying intellectual property and decided that patents were pretty interesting. And along that same timeline, I started studying computer science. I've actually been writing software since I was a kid. I had a TRS-80 hooked up to a TV when I was 5 years old, and have been programming since then. So I decided to study computer science at the graduate level. So I have a master's in computer science. After then, I started working in patents. And I started protecting a lot of specifically software for a lot of companies that were on the cutting edge, and representing companies from a number of different sizes, Fortune 50 all the way down to sole inventors. And so I've been doing that since 2007 in the preparation and prosecution side of patents. Also along the line, I started getting interested in circuitry as well and electronics. So I started studying electrical engineering, and I just completed a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from George Mason University. So most of my work these days.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I'm with a firm called Studebaker Brackett that's here in Northern Virginia, and requisite statement, nothing I say is representative of the firm or any clients. This is not legal advice. These are all my personal views. I have to say that. But I love patents. I've been working with a lot of companies, more specifically in semiconductor fabrication, circuitry, a lot of those sorts of industries over the last several years. So I've, I think, a wide range of experience. My interest in 3D printing started about 5 years ago. As part of electrical engineering, I started getting interested in the idea of printing robots, printing functional printing. So I bought my first printer, which was a FlashForge Creator Pro, and struggled with it for a long time. It was great when it worked, which was about maybe 50% of the time out of the box, and it dipped from that point forward. So I did a hell of a lot of printing and threw a lot of it away, and spent a lot of time learning about 3D printers while trying to fix that one. So eventually I gave up on that printer and instead traded up to a Prusa i3 Mark III, which is a great
It's been
experience.
smooth sailing ever since, right?
Absolutely, right out of the box. For the most part, fantastic. For various reasons, I ended up buying a second Prusa i3 Mark III's, which is now sitting here. I just built it last weekend. Great products. I've been interested in 3D printing since, and I'm of course a rank amateur compared to any of you. But I'm interested in 3D printing and, of course, the patents as well.
Wow, you've got so much education to your name.
I was going to say, have you spent the majority of your life in school? That sounds like a long time.
And working, not to mention.
Yeah, that's
at
impressive.
the same time.
My wife tells me I'm not allowed to go for any more degrees, so I'm done.
It's like an addiction for you. She's like, no more packs. You can't have another cigarette.
Right, exactly.
Oh my God.
I'm thinking that David may have more schooling than the three of us combined.
Probably.
I've got 8 years. Tad, you've got 4. Thomas, how many years do you have?
I got like 6.
You've got 6.
Stretched it a little.
Tad, come on, man.
Like a long, like the long haul.
Did you take the Tommy Boy approach to getting a degree?
I took a minor in Japanese. That was a large commitment of time.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
A cool
Excuses. You weren't just partying every weekend.
No, I wish.
Oh man, cool. Well, that's awesome. Great. So I know next to nothing about patents in this industry at all. So this podcast will be a big learning experience for me in the first place. So that's where I stand on patenting at all. Actually, patenting widely is an unknown to me. I effectively know what it is, like if I looked it up in a dictionary.
Well, let's start there because we can't generally assume that the listeners or watchers know about patents. They might be saying, well, I don't know what a gosh darn patent is, and the only thing I know about attorneys are I don't like them.
I'm going to get them.
I would like you to set that predisposed notion aside because David's pretty dope. I've talked with him for, how long did we talk? Like an hour and a half? It was a while. It was a lot longer than we had scheduled, I think, but it was a ton of fun. And I said, dude, you got to come on this podcast because he and I were on kind of the same wavelength of why do we do it this way? But we got to first understand what a patent is, why companies get them, why people get them, and try to understand why this industry hasn't.
Well, let me start here. So, Grant, one of the points that you covered pretty well in our conversation was about the prospect of Chinese knockoffs and the fact that there are lots and lots of counterfeit parts that are happening right now. There's lots of innovations happening that is now, 6 months later, you'll have Chinese printers that are coming in, and not just China, but generally Far East is the source. Include a lot of the same innovation, but of course they didn't spend any time at all developing it. They just spent time copying it and figuring out how to manufacture it, right? So you raise this as a problem. Can I ask you to talk a little bit about that as your background? What do you see in terms of what's happening, and what are the challenges that you think they pose to the industry?
So the knockoff thing, but before I get into it, let me just touch real quick on the patents themselves. Patents will protect you. That's it. It protects your idea, it protects your design, something. A patent equals protection, okay? That's just part of the deal, right? If you're going on a date, have a patent. I mean, wait, no, that's different subject. Anyways, this industry has gone about this route of saying open source all the things, which from a standpoint of a user, hell yeah, open source all the things, because then I can buy it from whoever I want. But that also means that whoever wants can make it. And that becomes a bit of a problem when you deal with BS knockoffs. I'm going to make a specific call out because everyone knows them, whether you like them or you hate them. Triangle Labs. They're based in China. They are known for being one of the greatest and one of the worst knockoff companies in the industry. If you are a manufacturer, you hate them. If you are a user, they're okay. They're okay. We have tried parts from them. They're better than we expected. But now that China's kind of changed the way that they ship things to the States, the pricing is not as different as you think it would be. It used to be like crazy. But they're taking patented designs, particularly Slice Engineering. I've spoken with the owner of Slice a couple of times, Dan, about this, and he's furious because there's nothing that he can do to protect himself. If he can patent it in China, go ahead, but you got to jump through all the hoops that you have to deal with by working with China. And then you actually have to enforce it. And the hardest thing about the patents are freaking enforcing them.
That's quite true. So it's obviously a two-step process. You file for your application.
Yes.
You either draft the application yourself or you pay a patent practitioner to do it for you. You draft the application. I guess this is a good time to go over the entire process. So you draft your application, you submit it to the patent office, and the very first thing they do is they take your money, because the patent office always wants to take your money. So they'll take the fees. They will give you a serial number. They'll say, here, you have application number 16, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you have a filing date, and there you go. And you'll hear from an examiner eventually. Now, they will assign it to a patent examiner who will eventually get back to you as to what they think of your patent application. That used to be a very long process. In fact, it used to be even on the order of 2 years before you would get your first office action. The patent office used to be really backlogged. They've really cut down on that. So it's 6 months or so, sometimes faster, sometimes longer. There are ways to speed up that process if you want. But one way or the other, you will eventually get what they call a first office action, which is the patent office saying, the examiner saying, I've reviewed your application and here's what I think of it. And 95% of the time, they will come back and say, your application is rejected. Congratulations, you get nothing. right? And that, of course, most inventors tend to panic at that point, and they say, all my claims are rejected. What's going on?
It's a kick in the groin the first time that an inventor goes through it. They're like, wait, so you're saying I had to spend all this money again? No.
Right.
A little bit,
no.
but no.
What you want to do is so the examiner will say, you don't get your patent for these reasons. Either you made some mistakes in how you drafted your claims, and each patent claim is a one-sentence description of what your invention is. You have to add one or more claims to your patent. You usually add about 20, where the first one will say it's a method of manufacturing a product comprising, and then you lay out a set of steps. And then you might have some additional claims that say all of those steps plus this other thing, or all of those steps where this one is more specific, right? So you have all these claims that you filed, and the examiner will say, I looked at every single one of your claims, and none of them meets all the requirements of patenting, which it has to be basically well described, and then it has to be novel and non-obvious, which are two terms of the art that I'll get into in a little bit. But basically, the examiner will say, your invention is not new because, and then they will tell you what they found, all what they call the prior art. So patents, patent applications, publications, anything that's published before you filed your application. All that stuff counts against you. And the examiner will say, I did my research. Here's what I found. Tell me why you deserve a patent, why these claims are new. And what you want to do then is to look through your claims and say, okay, and look through the references that were cited and say, here's what's different. Here's what's in my claim. Here, this particular phrase in my claim is the thing that sets apart what's new, as described in the entire application that I filed, and here's why it's different. So you basically explain that to the examiner, and the examiner will either be persuaded and say, okay, I'll allow your application, or will say, no, because I reconsidered or performed an updated search and I found new stuff that covers exactly what you're saying. And so there's this back and forth that will end with either you convince the examiner that what you have in your claims is allowable, or you don't and you abandon your application, or you can continue fighting it out in the Patent Trial and Appeal Board within the USPTO, which is another entire process. But the examiner is not the end all and be all. He is for the most part in terms of if you want your patent fast and cheap, but there are ways to get around the examiner if the examiner's not being reasonable. So that's the entire process. It's basically this back and forth between you and the patent office. And eventually, hopefully, you get the examiner to say, your application is allowed. Here, the claims that you have originally presented, you persuaded me they're novel and non-obvious, or you fixed any errors, or you amended your claims to get around the art that I provided. So your patent now issues, and you pay an additional fee because the patent office always needs to get its fees, right?
Hey, whoa! They are a government entity. Their pound of flesh is very important because none of us pay anywhere near enough in taxes. No, we need to pay more because who else is going to fund their superfluous denials and BS that they make? Oh, wait, that's stuff they make us go through. Oh, damn it.
Right, and we pay for that. And unfortunately, when they make mistakes, we still have to pay them more to go back and revisit their work and fix it. So, yeah, there are fees along the way. Fortunately, the fees are less now because for what they call small entities, companies with under 500 employees, academic institutions, et cetera, all the fees are cut in half. And for what they call micro entities, this is a newer thing under the American Invents Act passed by Barack Obama, all the fees are cut to a quarter for people who make us under a certain income level, sole inventors who haven't filed many applications, that sort of thing. So there's a way to get a break on the fees. And there are other ways to work with the examiner to try to get your application through faster. So there are ways to deal with it, right? You can do some of the work yourself to cut down on the preparation fees. If you get the right practitioner, there are ways to work through the system. So that gets you a patent. And the question is, what do you do with it? And this raises the issue that
you hang it on a wall and it looks pretty.
Right.
I was gonna say that would be my first instinct is like, this will look nice next to my diploma. And now I have 2 pieces of paper I paid money for.
Very fancy paper, to be fair.
Okay, good.
But yes, you can do more things with it. So a patent is a government grant of a monopoly on your particular idea. And for a certain period of time, you get to tell everybody else that they can't do that specific thing that you claimed and that the government said, yes, this looks like it's novel and non-obvious. You paid all the right fees. You went through the process. You get a right that we, as the government, will enforce. And the way they enforce it is by finding infringing products and then filing lawsuits, or paying somebody to send nasty letters to them to say, we will file lawsuits unless you stop what you're doing, right? That is the only thing that a patent on its face allows you to do, is to stop other people from using your invention. But the important point that I think a lot of people miss is that's kind of the worst case scenario, is suing anybody over this stuff. And really, it's the deterrent effect of we could sue you, so therefore you really have to work with us in order to work out the rights. Now, the overarching point that I want to make here is a patent right is really a neutral thing, much like a gun is a neutral thing, right? Guns can be used for evil, they can be used for good, right? It's a property right that, very much like real estate property rights, you can take an ownership of a plot of land and you can turn it in, you can put up walls, you can say, this is my only place, nobody else is allowed in here, or you pay me exorbitant fees and I'll let you in, or you can turn it into a public park. You can do whatever you want with it. It's a property right, just like a real estate property right. You have many different choices. And a lot of different industries use patents in very different ways, some of which are not as anti-competitive as you might think from a lot of the bad press about patents. Yes, there are bad players out there who try to lock down an entire industry and even do that without making any progress themselves. There are a lot of answers to that, but there are also a lot of alternatives of industries that, of companies that work together to create a consortium of anybody can use these patents and can practice in the space as long as, for instance, they maintain certain standards of performance, compatibility. There are a lot of examples, one of which is the Wi-Fi industry. There's a group called the Wi-Fi Alliance that has a consortium of anybody can basically use any of these patents that are essential to implementing a Wi-Fi device, as long as they guarantee things like compatibility, performance, there are some security constraints. They basically submit their products for review. And as long as they pass it, they get to use all those patents in addition to calling their product Wi-Fi and such. So there are a lot of rights that go along with all this, and anybody can make Wi-Fi products as long as and use all those patents, as long as they maintain their standards. But meanwhile, if they're bad players who decide to use all that technology, but lock down their products and that's proprietary and only works with their own, now they're all of a sudden they're in violation of all those patents. So it's a way to enforce compatibility, and it's a way to enforce good players doing good things in the industry. So this is an option that I think that the 3D patent community has explored to an extent, but I think it's been very limited.
Yeah, we have like two different perspectives here, and one of them is the Prusa model: open source all the things, except the things we don't want to open source. And that's kind of common, right? They're not open. They haven't yet published the files for their new 32-bit buddy board that they're using in the Mini, because they want the head start. Right, because if they publish it before they get their printers heavily in the hands of others, you've got a problem. I mean, literally, we were going through this in the Prusa Discord where Matt was talking to Brad about this. Brad's been a guest and hoping we can get Matt on. That'd be pretty cool. But he's talking like, look, we don't want to publish these files too early because people will start seeing the parts from China quicker than we can get them out, because China is just F5ing our GitHub waiting for us to post something. And Thomas, seriously, it's true. I mean, to give you a great example.
Oh yeah, I totally believe it.
We have all four Prusas running in the background today. That's a fun day. But the blue one, this first one, they all have different accent colors for those that aren't able to see it. But it came with a bad Pinda sensor. It's bed leveling sensor that enables it to do mesh bed leveling. It was DOA. Well, it's 6 days from Prague to get it here. Okay. Clickety clack, went on to Amazon. I found one Prime next day for $15. I cannot tell the difference in terms of quality. They look different, but the performance is identical. And we literally have printers next to each other, one that has the generic Pinda and one that doesn't. Well, it's like $11 from Prusa. It is actually cheaper from Prusa if you don't factor in the shipping from Prague. It's expensive to ship it from Prague. Now, because the machine was under warranty, they included it under the warranty. And Prusa has incredibly phenomenal customer service. If you are looking to buy a printer, take a look at Prusa. And we didn't get to our billing department. Tad, what the hell's wrong with us? This episode is...
I don't know.
Man, come on, Tad. I'm blaming you.
I'm dropping the ball here.
You brought us in. I'm blaming you. No, it's my fault. This episode, as always, is brought to you by 3D Musketeers. If you out there want to learn more about patenting, if you want to learn more about making awesome, the name of the podcast, you can reach out to us at 3D Musketeers. All the links will be in the description. But, this industry, it's weird, right? You've got Stratasys on one hand that says, no open source for you, right? It's the damn soup Nazi of closed source.
They really are.
The reason this industry is so fresh, I say fresh, but it's been around for, 12 years now, is because of Stratasys. They locked down FDM. It's the most affordable 3D printing process. And, SLA was under some patents, but it was patented in the 80s. So by the time 3D printing got popular in the early 2000s, SLA patents had ran out years prior. But it was still ungodly expensive because the only way to do it was with galvanometers and lasers. And lasers go pew, galvanometers go whoosh. Both of those are expensive. The issue here is the patents are what kept this industry from moving. And everyone got kind of salty about it. And they said, you know what? F it. No patents. Nobody do patents. We're going to do this whole system around the RepRap project, which is what kind of founded open source 3D printing, because these were dudes in their homes doing it because they could. They weren't doing it for a business initially. This was done because this was for the greater good of the industry. We were trying to build this acknowledgement of what's going on out there without really making stuff scary. I don't know the better way to describe it, because it is a little bit weird how we went about it. But I think ultimately, as a whole, we got there, right? I truly believe we did. And the problem, and like like David was saying, I'm thinking of Dan from Slice, sorry. David mentions, that there are ways that we can still have patents but not be dicks about it. And I think that's kind of the big deal here. We've gotten so far into open source that there's very little on a 3D printer that can still be patented. And when you look at like what Creality did, David, were you involved in the industry when the whole BS with Creality came out, how they were using open source but they weren't talking about it?
I'm aware of some parts of it, yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts there?
I think that good open communication is good. Being clear about what's protected and what's not is good. I think that having a community discussion about here's how the stuff's going to work, here's how we're going to play together, here's what part of it I believe is mine that I want to protect versus, and here's how I'm going to allow other companies to use it if they are industry partners. I think that there are ways to protect innovation without, as you said, being a dick about it. And one point that I want to raise. So 3D patenting, the 3D printing patents are happening. It's just that the primary assignees, the primary, so you have to file a patent in the United States in the names of the inventors. But the very first thing that happens is it gets assigned through some assignment agreements that are recorded at the patent office to the company they work for. The top assignees are General Electric, 3M, HP, Raytheon, 3D Systems, Boeing, Stratasys, Xerox, Nike, Samsung, and IBM. They are patenting the hell out of 3D printing in certain ways. And as you can imagine, there are lots of different things that although you said, 3D printing can't really be patented anymore, innovation is still happening every single day. There are better printers. There are better types of filament, new types of filament. There are new printing techniques. There are new services. I mean, you guys are all involved in this. You guys are all innovating every single day.
The great example, one of them that you mentioned, HP. So look back 5 years ago and nobody saw it coming. Nobody saw HP. I think it was 2016 that they announced the MJF process, I believe. And they did it in Rapid. It was dope. I was there. It was so cool. I was fanboying like crazy. But no one saw it coming. And in your mind, you're like, I wonder why HP isn't playing. And then all of a sudden, they just whipped it out. And they came out
under wraps.
They kept it completely under wraps. They did not patent anything until it went live, or they assigned it under something different. They hid everything. Nobody saw this coming. And MJF hit the market, and holy crap, SLS is old school news now.
Oh, yeah.
MJF is the new hotness. Now, SLS is still good. It still has its don't throw your EOS SLS machines out, is what I'm trying to tell you. MJF is a great technology, but if you ingrained in SLS, keep it. Maybe not buy new ones, but keep SLS. They patented the MJF process, but here's the problem, and it's
multi-jet fusion, right?
Multi-jet fusion, yeah. It's a powdered. It's not sintered nylon. They use a binder and a heat lamp. So it's a binder jetting process, and then the heat lamp will just heat the piss out of it and bonds it together enough. It's not a laser sintered process, but it's somewhat sintered with this lamp, and it requires minimal to no post-processing. It comes out with a really, really nice finish comparatively to an SLS, which generally needs to be tumbled. It's also like a gray. It's like a gunmetal gray. I wish I'd known we were talking about this. I could have grabbed my MJF samples, but it's relatively indistinguishable from SLS unless you're really knowing what you're looking for in terms of surface feature. But HP did what HP does, and it's the same thing that pisses me off about the companies that patent it. They patent the technology, and then they charge you out the ass for the materials. And that's a problem, because now what you're doing is you're saying, you must be this rich to play. And what you do is you stifle innovation on the low end or the affordable end, because that's where innovation happens that matters to the everyday consumer, right? We're trying to get SJ and Cannell in here to talk about metal 3D printing and the innovation that happens there. But it's kind of the same deal, right? Everything is locked down. If you are not like in that game, if you're not a player and you're not actively watching it, it's going to go right by you like yesterday's news, because it's irrelevant. And HP, I think they found that out the hard way, right? Their 4200 sold like hotcakes, and then it didn't, because everyone that could afford it bought one, and then nobody else needed it. So what did they do? They did the same thing 3D Systems does. They raised their prices. They raised their consumables prices. They made it more difficult for you to get service. They made it more expensive for you to get service. And so what are your options? You buy two machines, because if one of your machines goes down and it takes a week to get
cannibalize the other one.
Well, no, you have a backup machine, right? So you double your production, but realistically, it's like 1.6, 1.7 your production because downtime. And like particularly 3D Systems and Stratasys piss me off, because the both of them go on these buying sprees every couple of years. 3D Systems is famous for it back in the like 2012-ish era. They bought up like 85 companies in a year. Their stock price went through the roof. And then it tanked back down to $10. 3D Systems, you can go straight to hell. I'm not salty. I just... God, I hate them. I hate them so much.
What fascinates me about, like, I mean, this is just a quick little tangent, but and this is not directly related, but when we're talking about innovation and the people with the less money being the innovators, I think that is just something that is understood across a lot of different industries. Like, for example, as a student, I was able to get like 460 days for free of Cinema 4D, which is a really powerful rendering engine for like, 3D scenes and 3D modeling. And I mean, like industry standard, typically runs you like $800 a year for a single license, which is far too expensive for people like me to say, okay, I'll do that instead of use Blender, which is free. But Cinema 4D has certain functionality that Blender doesn't. But the moment that you give that to students is the moment that we start building plugins for Cinema 4D because we want different things in it, but we have access to a full version of it, an industry, quality version of the software, which then makes us be like, oh, we can make this better, or now we will use it down the line later, which I know is different with the software model, but the spirit of it, I guess, is similar.
Absolutely, the spirit is there, right? Stratasys still has FDM 3D printers. They still do them. That's actually, they have copywritten the title FDM, and they protect it all by DRM, all their digital protection, chipped filament, and all that. And they'll charge you $250 a kilo for material that is not costing them more than $20 to make.
Well, you know what this reminds me of, and this may be like, I don't know how similar this might be, but like the entire straight up printing industry, like we're talking printing,
yes, totally.
Does not
2D
make money
printing.
They don't make money on hardware. They make money on the consumables. Right? So how is that model that different? Because of HP was like, no, we're going to charge.
No, HP did the same shit they always do.
Yeah.
And
okay.
Like, to give you an idea, so we run full color 3D printers here. So they have a binder, which is ink. So it's cyan, magenta, yellow, black, and clear It's a white powder, so that's white. 5 different inks, average 28 cents a milliliter. We ran a 6-month test with laser mass spectrometers to figure out what is in it. First off, had a delta over 20, which is ridiculous. Your delta should be sub 0.1. A good
Are you talking
delta.
about like variation?
Yes.
What's your delta?
Yes,
Okay.
it's a delta variation. So over 2, I guess it's 2,000%. It's an incredible
That's
amount of
awful.
variation. And this
That's
is a
not
machine.
good quality control.
Thank you. Thank you. See, because I thought I was going crazy when all of a
No,
sudden we're
that's-
running the same. We replacing ink cartridges. We're running the
colors come
same
out
prints,
different.
and the models looked at them like, no. That's not how this shit works. And we ultimately made our own ink because we needed to keep it safe. But here's the deal: we reverse engineered the formula with laser mass specs. It's really simple: alcohol, sugar, water,
Food coloring.
That's it. 28 cents a milliliter. You can
For that.
produce it in bottles for less than 5 cents a milliliter. Actually, you can do it for about 2. If you're trying, you can do it about 2, but then you're doing it in drums. And you can refill their cartridges because, the community's found ways to do it. You're not supposed to. But I don't care, 3D Systems. Suck it. I don't have a warranty anymore. I am the warranty.
The warranty was voided years ago, back in the dark ages.
Yes, when I stopped paying $9,000 a year for a $70,000 machine to make sure that it ran, and when it didn't run, I had to wait 3 weeks to get service. That's not how this works. I'm paying almost $1,000 a month. I want next day service, if not 2 days service minimum.
Wait, was that the price of the service contract?
Yes, $9,000
Whether you
a
use it
year.
or not?
Whether you use it or not.
Oh,
Oh, it's a
that's
good thing we have.
atrocious.
Now, you could
Reddit.
get a parts warranty, which is $4,500, which just got you parts. Normally, I kept that up because you would use it. You would
Yeah.
use it. But we found ways to reverse engineer the parts and make them ourselves because, like, the machine uses a big ribbon cable, which is constantly moving. It's made of copper. Copper work hardens and breaks.
It's gonna break eventually.
But
Yep.
there's nothing special to that cable. It's some Molex connectors and some ribbon cables. You can make them yourself.
Yeah.
And they're $450 for a ribbon cable. Yep. Why? Because middle fingers to everyone. That's why. That's I think is what's given so many people a bad taste, and why some of these companies have just decided, you know what? Nah, bro, we ain't touching it. It is safer for us to say, you know what, the IP that we could get, because what these companies are doing is they're devaluing themselves. All right, David, can you talk a little bit about this whole idea of valuation and patents? Because technically, Prusa is really only worth their client list. They don't have any patents, to my knowledge. I could be wrong. But to my knowledge, they don't have any patents. But a Stratasys, and I guess, yeah, Stratasys has a juicier client list, but it is 1/1000th the size of Prusa. But why is Stratasys worth more? It's the patents, right?
Well, you have to consider what they're doing with the patents. If what they're doing with the patents is locking people into
Yes.
this particular printer and then overcharging on consumables or overcharging for cables or service or all this stuff, right? That's their business model. They're using their patents to say, we own this space, nobody else can play here, and we are going to jack the rates up on all this stuff way beyond anything's reasonable, right? That is a bad use of patents. That is one way to use them, and because it's a property right, it is a bad use of patents because it gets you a lot of bad press, because it gets you a smaller share of the market as everyone else decides to not do business with you, right? I mean, your views on Stratasys and the views of the community on Stratasys limit Stratasys' ability to expand, to partner with others in this industry to make better products, to expand to other bases of consumers. I mean, they limit themselves by
You would think that.
patents in that way.
I feel that they did this strategically because the people that... So if you're buying a Stratasys FDM printer, you're not printing ABS, okay? You're printing polycarbonate, PCPT, PEEK, PEC, Ultem, and up until Intemsys came out with the FunMat, which, by the way, is a $5,000 printer capable of printing Ultem, which, you know Ultem, right, David?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. For those that don't know Ultem, god-tier plastic. You can hit it with a 3,000-degree blowtorch. It will not catch fire. Period. It is from Sabic. Sabic is the company that makes it. About $600 a kilogram. Buying it through Stratasys on their spools, they charge you for, I think it's 92 cubic inches, which is roughly 250 grams. Last I checked, $2,700.
Oh
But
my God.
For the privilege.
For the privilege. But it's fully certified, which is the big deal with Ultim. You need certification. And, you know, if I have a mission-critical component, I'm not trusting a $5,000 printer. Now, I would hedge a bet. Now, the FunMat HT is not a great printer, so comparing it is rough. Let's compare it to the HT2 from 3DX Tech, which is about a $60,000 printer, to the Fortis 450, which is about $400,000 with the Ultem package. Because, oh yeah, the Fortis 450 starts at $250,000, but can only print like ABS. I think it can go up into polycarb. You have to unlock other materials, and it's a software unlock. That's it. But because they chip all their filament, they have RFID tags in them. The machine can say, "Ha, not today, sir. You didn't pay for the Nope, trying to think of a good joke that's not rape related. Oh well. It's too expensive."
You've been the one that's been. You're the one that's been not safe for work today. I haven't done anything.
I know you haven't done anything yet.
You haven't talked much either, okay?
I've been doing my best.
They say no. Pay me or you can't use it. And the Ultem package is $10,000 to just... They send you a code. You type it into your keyboard. You know what that 10 grand is worth to them? An email. It's profit. That's what it is. And then, like, look, if you were going to unlock Ultem on a Prusa for $1,000, and then I could just go buy my own filament, please tell me where I can send my check. You can't print Ultem on a Prusa. Don't try it.
I was about to say, I feel like with how we've talked about this material, just throwing it in a 3D printer seems like not a good idea.
To give the people out there an idea, it needs a nozzle temperature north of 450 degrees centigrade. Even all metal hot ends stop at about 400 because the thermistors don't read well above it. You need to go into a thermocouple. You need to have a bed that can go north of 190 degrees centigrade, which is the definition of oh shit hot. Then you need a chamber that is also heated, minimally 120 degrees centigrade, preferably over 200 if you can do it. And the reason Stratasys has basically kept Ultem under their control is because they have a patent surrounding the motors. Stratasys, their patent strictly states that the motors are on the outside of the build volume and the stuff happens on the inside. That's really the only way to do it unless you are liquid cooling. And this is not PC liquid cooling. Right? Yeah, you'll overheat the motors. Stepper motors can only go up to about 100 C before you start losing things. And servos are a little bit lower because they have electronics in them. So you now need to actively cool them, which is not just a radiator PC cooler. You need refrigeration-based cooling. And you need a lot of it. So the companies that do this, Intemsys is Chinese, so they just didn't give a shit. They just went for it. But some of the other companies have had to find ingenious ways around this patent because it is stifling industry stuff. And it was supposed to expire last year. Stratasys filed for a extension and got it. So I think they've got, another 2 years to either make a change or it goes back into open source or public domain. I don't know how that works. I'm not the patent attorney on the call.
Let's ask David.
So that's a little bit interesting because patents have a limited term. For older patents, it used to be it was 20 years from the day that you filed it. Or,
Yep.
or I'm sorry, from the. I'm sorry, no, 20 years from the point of issue, right? So if you prosecute it for a really long time and then suddenly it issued, you have a certain amount of time past that, right? It's now 20 years from the date of filing. So from the date you filed it, if it takes 5 years to get through the patent office, or if it takes 19 years to get through the patent office, you get 20 years total. That's it. And the end of that, there are only very limited conditions in which that can be extended, right? And that can be extended basically for delays that happen in the patent office that are patent office's fault, right? Like the examiner issued a really bad rejection that eventually got overturned by the Patent Trial and Appeal Board. Doesn't really happen that often. So it's really a very limited period of time. And when you say that Stratus has filed for extension, I'm not sure exactly what that means. I would have to go back and take a look at it. But the
I
point
might
is,
be misrepresenting it too. So
it's okay. It's okay. I mean, this stuff is really complicated.
yes, it is.
But so patents expire, right? And as soon as they expire, anything that was patented is now in the public domain, right? And you already know that. So there are, as I said, there are bad ways to use patents, right? And that seems to be one of them. I think one of the questions that you have to go back and ask is, when they filed those patents originally, what was the state of the industry? Like, was anybody thinking about putting the motors on the outside? Was anybody right? So if they were
nobody thought about
industry,
chambers back then.
That makes it novel.
It was
That's
novel,
exactly right.
unique, and non-obvious. It was all of those things.
Okay, so printers are in a very different place today. The entire 3D printing community is in a very different place today. And everything that is known today, you can't patent because it's already known. And the publications are out there. And if anybody tries to patent the concept of printing on a bed with filament or something, you can file whatever you want. And the patent office is going to turn around and say, right, they're going to say, thank you for the money. You don't get your patent.
It is the USPTO. They might give it to you. Who the hell knows?
And then good luck enforcing it, right? Because the patent is a piece of paper, right? You still need a court to say this is valid, and you then have your as a company that's unfairly accused, you have the chance to say this shouldn't have been issued in the first place, right?
Do things like that happen where a product has already been made and produced and it's already out there and it gets patented after the fact? How do you walk that back?
Well, the patent process takes a while. So, that from when you file your application to when you get it, your product can come out 6 months later, and you might actually end up getting your patent a year or two down the line, or you might file some continuations that you get the claims that you want 5 years later, right? So the patent rights can take a while to work out. One of the problems for a lot of 3D printing manufacturers is that there's an 18-month delay between when an application gets filed and when it becomes published by the USPTO. And there are even ways to extend that if you want to not file anywhere else. You can have it not published until the day it issues as a patent, right? And that might be years later. So there are ways to, it's a little difficult to know who's actually filing for what today, right? But the prior art is what it is today. And everything that's been published, everything you guys have talked about on your podcast could be cited against any applications that are filed today.
Don't say those things. Don't. I don't want.
This is a good thing.
I don't need to get served. I don't need any of these gentlemen to get served. This is not. No, stop it. Let us live in our broad realm of ignorance.
I think you're misunderstanding, Grant.
You're misunderstanding. These are views that we want from patent attorneys coming to us because
send them, boys.
It'll give us that boost, And hey, if you're a patent attorney watching this episode, welcome to the podcast. Please leave a like and subscribe.
Ring that bell.
Yeah, Thomas, while you're at it, please, let's go to the billing department. Let's run another ad.
Let's go. The DMV probably needs something to watch. I feel like we could just go get around to all the government agencies.
No, the billing department is when we make an ad about 3D Musketeers, Thomas.
Oh, do you want me to roll into the billing department?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, cool. I thought you were talking about another.
It's one of those episodes, isn't it?
Are we being sponsored by 3DM today, or are we getting sponsored by Prusa? Because we keep.
Well, we wish we
were sponsored by Prusa.
Yeah, we keep indirectly selling Prusa printers every day.
Who signs the paychecks? 3DM does.
Thank you, everybody, for watching our podcast. This isn't the end of the podcast, but this is, in fact, a mid-roll advertisement. Remember, Making Awesome is brought to you by 3D Musketeers, the guys who pay the bills for this podcast. And if you want your ideas made and come to life, they've got all sorts of different ways to make that happen. All the way from the beginning of your product to the end. We got end-to-end development, baby.
Art to part, man. Art to part.
Art to part. Get over to 3dmusketeers.com, and all the links are in the description for whatever you need. Ka-chow.
We will eventually put some form of, questions and answers together. I just like off the cuff. I don't know. I'm sorry, David.
It's worse.
This is great. I'm having fun.
Because I just did my first kind of structured podcast. I was on Billy Rubin's Meet the Maker. Ha! Another backlink for Billy. But it was structured right. They gave me this whole list of questions that they wanted me to answer. We didn't get through half of them. Not even close. It quickly. We're talking. They wanted me to talk about the life story. I say about the Smithsonian, and then boom, we are in a whole different direction. We are talking about the Smithsonian. Then somehow we backtrack to Snoop Dogg. Then we go. It was a hell of a ride. The episode is not yet public, so I'm hoping to. It's gonna be cool when it comes public. But David, I met on Billy Rubin's Discord. So he's in the Friends of Billy Rubin, and he did his old introduction. I'm like, wait a minute, you're a patent attorney that likes 3D printing? Hey, can we talk?
See, that is fascinating because I find that people from all different walks of life have some connection to 3D printing, or there are people that are like, I am, professionally but I also do 3D printing on the side, and like that, hobbyist mentality or even sometimes professional mentality just brings in such an interesting group of
It does.
I would have never thought I would be speaking to the patent attorney who does 3D printing on the side. And I think that's so awesome because now I get an excuse to talk to you. I think that's great.
And when he posted, I'm like, wait, so because when I think patent attorneys, I think like people that work with inventors, because the bulk of when we deal with patent attorneys are when we work with our inventors. No, you actually don't. You deal mostly with larger corporations whose names we will not mention, unless you already did, but I'm not going to mention it. My memory's terrible, so that's fine. But you are a maker on the side, and you're a patent attorney by day, so your experience is a little bit different. So in talking to you, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, this is actually way cooler. Because we've got patent attorneys that understand the industry that work with inventors. They're a little kooky. Sorry, Chris. But I love them to death.
Weirdly enough, today talking about patents and hearing from David, I've both been like had heartwarming feelings of like, oh, the industry is using patents to take care of the industry, and we're like pushing things forward. And I've also had like that corporate like, oh no. Oh God, they're taking everything. But I feel like we should roll back to an interesting point that was made earlier, and I think David started getting into it, was talking about like, where was the state of the industry when the patents were made for the motors being on the outside of a heated chamber?
Or any of the patents for that
thing.
Yeah.
So I think the screwy part where it's like, ew, did you really have to like renew or whatever may have happened with this patent? Instead of them making that patent forever ago, I feel like that was like a form of them being like, okay, we don't know, we should do this. Because if I was in their position, I'd be like, I'm protecting that because, this is something that I've made. It's something that we do in the design industry all the time. And we actually have to talk to our clients about, how do you protect your intellectual property rights of like this, this look, or these people like can say colors belong to them. Like that's a real thing.
Vanta Black.
Vanta Black is the worst
that guy's
way
a jerk.
That's happened. But if you go around to different industries and you like Target's red is Target's red specifically. Yes. Like if other people start using it in a way, and it's almost impossible to use it in a way that's damaging to them. Mm-hmm. But if you then begin using that red in a way that is either competitive or damaging to them in that industry, that's actually grounds for them to say, hold up, cease and desist. And that's crazy.
Does somebody literally scour the internet with like the eyedropper tool comparing Pantone values?
Yes.
No. Why would anyone do? No, it would only
probably
happen
a bot.
if Target.
That's right.
If Target saw the competitor making more money than them, with their red on their logo in their stores, that would be the moment that Target would be like, hey, wait a second, that's our red in a store that looks like our store. So I bet you it's part of a larger brand identity.
It would have to be
thing.
much more egregious.
There are companies that are just full of patent trolls that are going out there either looking for patents to rip off or looking for things that they can say, oh, no. That's patented or trademark or copywritten. Cease and desist, baby.
See,
we know they exist.
I don't even want to begin to believe that, because I feel like if I had that job, boy, my life would be so much shorter than I planned it on being if I was that guy.
Look,
could you imagine?
You do what you got to do to pay the bills, okay? There is no shame in having a job these days.
The people who had to manually put the blurs on people in Naked and Afraid.
That's like kind of
they hated their lives.
Tad,
I've never had to do that, but
I don't think that's manual, dude. I'm pretty sure that's just
it's manual.
It's not like computer tracked.
Nope.
No. You can only computer track so much, and it turns out we don't have smart AI to... We're not going to get too deep into this.
I need you to track the ding dong, okay?
Yeah, I'm not very good at it. People are better.
If someone out there wants to build a plugin for After Effects to do that, then it would have to be open source though, because no one's going to pay for that except shows like Naked and Afraid.
Well, wait, then you don't want it to be
niche
open
application.
source. You want to charge just enough so that they look at it and say, nah, we'd rather just pay for it than hire people. Because insurance is expensive and so are taxes. We'll pay $10,000 for a plugin that'll get rid of the ability for us to need 3 people.
And then the plugin ends up like not working, so then you have people going back in anyway. And then
of course, it also has a yearly $2,500 renewal so that you can get your updates.
I'm writing all this down because I'm making this.
No. See, you're on my clock, baby. Anything that occurs on our clock belongs to the company.
You really want the the automatic smart genitalia blur.
Is it going to make me $10,000 every time someone buys it and $2,500 a year? If the answer to that is yes, then I want it. I mean, look, David's laughing, but he knows that. He knows that's true. Come on.
I know. I'm well aware of how this works, and I'm also confident that machine learning can do that, because somebody out there is developing a generative adversarial network that can censor correctly to the extent that other networks in the generative adversarial network can't tell the difference between human labeled and machine labeled. So.
Oh my God.
And that's when the angry robots take over the world, right? Where we can't distinguish blurred genitalia that are done by humans or done by robots. That would
be
a
weird path toward the singularity, but
it would be the most, probably the most comedic and weirdly appropriate path to singularity, right? Because that seems like, movies make it out to be like, oh my God, the power grid's been taken over, or no, they took over all of our military robots that we built. But this seems like the more human, real way that we would finally understand that the singularity was coming.
Circling back to a point that we were making earlier about the patents, patents being made at a different time under different conditions, and then is it kind of shitty when companies re-up them when the conditions have changed completely?
Can they re-up them? Let's start
first of all.
Well, presuming that they can. All right, so just kind of considering this entire concept of 20 years is a long time in an industry that moves as fast as 3D printing does, right? And software has the same problem. A lot of software companies say the stuff that we're inventing today, we don't know that we're even going to be using in 3 years. So why would we even bother going through the process to get a patent? / isn't it really unfair that some company patented this thing 15 years ago that we're using something today that looks very different but meets the claims that were filed all the way back then, right? So there are a lot of issues, and I think that patents, as part of your relationship with the rest of the industry as a company, I think that you can't look at it in isolation, right? Because if you're looking at it in isolation, I think that you're potentially damaging yourself from cutting off all of your other relationships, right? All the stuff that we talked about. I think that developing and using patents in a very smart way to say, all right, we have this particular innovation. Here's the thing that we created that we think is our advance over the industry. And we're going to allow people to use that under a license that's fair and reasonable and everything. But we're just not going to have other people take our innovation, include it in their products, and then do crappy things with it, right? Like Stratasys, you can't tell me that when Stratasys came out with these printers, they started from scratch, right? And created printers from scratch. No, of course not. They took a lot of basic ideas that probably go back decades, right? About printing generally, and the types of motors and the innovation. They didn't create a motor from scratch, right?
I think the worst part is how crude and generalized that their patents were. It was like they knew what was coming. When you look at some of the patents that Stratasys held that have now, entered the public domain, damn. And it's like what 3D Systems did, right? They gobbled up Chuck Hull, who was one of the OGs in the industry. So naturally, any patents that he had went under their portfolio. Because, he's on their board. He is still on their board. And so it's that same principle of, you took people that were doing this for innovation, you offered them obscene amounts of money. It's how, like, when Stratasys bought MakerBot, and everybody was poo-pooing MakerBot, saying, oh, F you, we would never do this. They got like $95 million.
I think people's attitudes
give me $95 million. I will flip off everybody and not care, because I'm going to do it for my own private friggin' island. And look, I don't blame the MakerBot guys one bit. But I bet if they look back at the industry, where they were moving toward and what Stratasys has done, they're going to be disappointed. Stratasys bought them for the name, because the name was what was that garnered so much, and they bought they bought the rights to MakerBot, and I think that was one of the most strategic buyouts in this industry. And that to me is that defining moment where we saw the shift between hobbyists and professionals, where when MakerBot was still around, we commingled, right? There was a lot of this back and forth. We were working with each other. As soon as MakerBot was bought, that went away, because MakerBot was one of the only companies at the time that were making anything that was really worth a salt, right? The MakerBot Replicator back then and the Replicator X were amazing printers. They were about $1,000. They were a little pricey, but there was nothing else out there that really compared. Lulzbot had something. Prusa, I think, was still on the Mark I at that point. And they were nowhere near as fledged out as MakerBot was. And, dude, you look at one of those old MakerBots today, your FlashForge Creator Pro, David, that's a MakerBot replicator. I mean, that's exactly what it is. They're still sold today. And because it was open source, all the cheap Chinese companies started replicating it. So you see them from JG Aurora and others. Because JG Aurora is the only one that came to mind when I first thought of it. Anycubic, I think, did one. FlashForge obviously did. Because they work, and they work really well. But what Stratasys did is said, nope, sorry, chipped filament, expensive printers, expensive filament, too bad. And it was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare for the industry, because that's when it was a slap in the face saying, you ain't got the money, honey. I ain't got the time. Go back and play in the sandbox. And it caused a move for me as a business owner, saying, well, wait a minute, this is not guaranteed anymore. If we're going to see companies that are dedicated to open source getting gobbled up, and I think MakerBot, they had dedications to open source, but they still had patents surrounding their design, maybe? I don't know. Because MakerBot itself was not worth $95 million. I'm honestly not certain why Stratasys paid so much money, and I don't know if it was ever released. What I heard in the rumblings of the industry was $95 million. And by all means, there is not a single individual out there, or a team of 5, that would not take an offer of $95 million to disappear. Sorry. You can live off. You could put it in a crappy bank account and live off the interest for the rest of your life. That's the issue that we see, and how do we as an industry get past this? Because currently, this 3D printing industry, we look at patents as bad, as a way that stifles growth, that only forces bad competition, not good competition. The difference being competition where company like AMD versus Intel, where they're constantly competing to get the next better. When we saw AMD not competing with Intel didn't give a shit. They were just releasing the same stuff every single year and calling it something new, maybe with a little bit better clock speed. Now that Ryzen and Threadripper are finally putting the haymakers in, Intel actually has to get their crap together, and they're not, right? There are very few people out there right now that are actively choosing to buy Intel 10th generation processors instead of going with Ryzen. Ryzen is cheaper, Ryzen is faster, Ryzen is better for the long term, and it's got better third-party support. I believe you actually chose Intel, though, didn't you, Thomas?
No, I have Ryzen.
Okay, I was gonna say, I thought your new build was Intel, and I'm like beating on you
No, it's
there.
Ryzen.
Okay.
No, it's a little fast computer. I can make renders so fast in Blender with ray tracing and everything. It's crazy.
One
Can't
day,
even begin to tell you.
One day, I'm listening to my computer wind up all of its fans because it's old. But I'm also recording two things at once. Okay, so it's
working.
Yeah, it's okay. We love you. It's okay. But how do we bring this back, David? Is there a way that we can bring it back to where patents aren't looked upon as a dirty word, and it's more of, this is for everybody? How do we do this?
Well, all right. I'm glad you asked, because it's hard for me to listen to you describe the industry and say patents are bad. We are facing a threat from knockoff competitors, but patents are bad. But we're facing a threat from these other companies that have patented stuff and they're not blocking stuff. And patents are bad, but at the same time, we see all these other companies that will patent, like HP, that will patent their stuff and then overcharge for consumables. But patents are bad, right? I mean, the problem is the preconception of, we see these other companies using patents in ways that are bad and anti-competitive, or just dodging, just ignoring all of it and kind of eating our lunch. And what do we do, right? Because patents are bad, right? If you start from that premise, then you're going to end up with that premise and all bad options that don't involve patents, right? And if none of those work for you, then you're stuck, right? The message that I'm trying to spread here is, I think that I mean, my ideal of the 3D printing industry is Prusa, right? I mean, I own two of the three printers that I bought are Prusa printers. I get it. I love seeing innovation happen with that model, right? I think that entire model, as you said, Grant, this entire industry is changing. There are other competitors that are happening. There's consolidation. There's stuff that's going to happen, right? And you can look at any industry that follows the same model of, it started with people innovating in their garage, right? And it kind of went from there, and it ended up in the hands of a few small companies, right? Like a few large companies, a small number of large companies, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
How did that happen, right? And you watch along the way, and you can see some of the same steps happening in the 3D printing industry. I think that this model that we have right now of, we have a lot of companies that are trying to innovate and trying to share and trying to just push the edge of the envelope and always outrun clones, and always have something that's better than what the big companies that are large and well-funded, but also dinosaurs, we're trying to stay ahead of them, right? I think that model is under threat. And I think it's under threat from just getting crushed by the bigger companies that have huge R&D departments will eventually find some way that they're going to make their own stuff, they're going to patent their own stuff, and now they own that part of it, they're going to overcharge for consumables, they're going to own that, right? That's going to be the top, and you're going to get crushed from the top and by that, because when you go to Amazon and type in 3D printer, you're not going to get Prusa, because you don't today. You're going to get the HP 3D printer, right?
God, I wish we could buy a Prusa from Amazon. Oh man, I'd have way more Prusas. I wouldn't just buy them every Black Friday because I don't want to pay $50 each to ship them. Right.
But that's what you're going to see. You're going to walk into Home Depot, and there will be the Dremel printer, right? Because Dremel had one for a while, right? You're going to see all these, the large companies with their offerings and overcharging for consumables and cables and things like that. And at the low end, you're going to have generics. If you go to Amazon right now and search for digital camera, right? What do you get? Not the ones in phones. You get Kodak, you get Canon, and you get thousands of, and Sony, and you get thousands of knockoffs. If you look back at the history of digital cameras, like 20 years ago, who was making them? All these small companies, right? And small innovators with names that you've never heard of today that don't exist anymore because they got squeezed out by the top end of Sony and the bottom end of knockoffs, right? I think the 3D printing industry is in that same exact place. And by saying patents are bad, I think that they're missing the key thing that can basically secure that part of the entire industry and continue innovating and continue operating as a community. So Grant, I told you the story earlier, and I'm going to share this. It's a story from the oil industry, actually. So we once met, and I'm obviously not sharing any names, but we once met with somebody from the oil industry, and they said, well, we want to talk about patents. And we said, oh, all right, well, tell us how it works in your industry. Does it ever get in the way? And their answer was really interesting. They said, patents never get in the way of anything that any of the oil companies that are competing with each other are doing, because we have an agreement that whenever company A invents something interesting, company B wants to use it, they can start using it from day one, and they will just get together and figure out what the fair market value of that is, and company B will license that from company A. We'll basically take all the lawyers, put them in a room, work it out, whatever's fair, right? And
fair is important.
Yes,
it's really important.
Yes,
because they recognize that it's so beneficial for all of them that it's worth it to just do that instead of litigating it, right?
This is the ideal situation, but this is not. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but it's not what's happening here. And I think part of the reason is, number one, the presumption that patents are bad. And number two, just this, we don't want to worry about it. We just want to run as fast as we can, right? And I think running as fast as you can works for a while until it doesn't.
You will trip. Ever tried running down a hill as fast as you can? Eventually you're going to fall. You're right. This is exactly where we are. And I would like to say, I do not inherently believe patents are bad. When I say patents are bad, I'm speaking for the industry, where if I go in and say, hey, look at my new hot and it's totally patented. Look at what Slice Engineering has. Look at what E3D has. Slice Engineering is double the price. Okay. Their sales are nowhere near what E3D is, because large manufacturers won't touch it, because even the wholesale pricing is more than E3D's retail. But Slice is fully patented. They have their technology. They know what they're doing. And damn it, it works. And it works really well. But the industry says, nah, bro, you're too expensive. I can just go get it from Triangle Labs for 1/10 the price. And what you're doing is you're stifling innovation, because you're not giving money to those who do it. Now, I would love to see all these manufacturers get together. Like when Ford and GE are patenting, they're patenting processes that they're using internally. It never goes outside of their labs. I don't really care. Honestly, I think that's kind of cool, because that gives all of us that want to look up the patents the ability to see what they're doing and how they're doing it, because patents are public domain. You can read them, you can look at them. And if you want to, like, if I wanted to build my own 3D printer that was high temp with the motors on the outside, I can. There's not a damn thing stopping me, unless I sell it. As soon as we sell it and we're using it for a commercial gain, as far as I'm aware, that's when it becomes illegal. We can actually build one, put it into our fleet, and use it, and that's totally legal, correct? Well, no, I don't want to do that, because that is asking legal advice, and I don't want to do that. But to my knowledge, it is correct. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I don't care. To my knowledge, it is correct, and because I've seen other people do it. So maybe they're wrong too. But that's where those patents can help. But the big companies that want to utilize it, Stratasys says, no, we're not licensing it. And that's where the problem comes in. It's where companies say, screw you, it's mine, go away. That they, I guess, really the RepRap project came out of the we're not going to take it anymore mantra. So there might be some good to it, but I think overall it's not good.
It's creating what's the term, a walled garden, right? Where it's just off in the distance. No one can touch it. No one can use it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't benefit anyone.
No. Unless
exactly
the flowers are really pretty.
So this is what I meant in terms of, you can buy a plot of land and put up walls and say, you can only come in here if you pay me $1 million, right? Or you can turn it into a public park and say, you can walk through here, you just can't vandalize it, right? There are
seems reasonable.
Okay, that's exactly what I think needs to be happening in this entire industry. Is I think there needs to be more of an effort to develop what's called an industry consortium. And this is a group of companies that all say, all right, we are working together to push the envelope and advance this stuff. But at the same time, we can't have any company that walks in the door just be able to pick up the entire state of the art and knock off their printer without paying any of the costs, right? So there are plenty of ways to create in this consortium of industries, of companies that all say, we contributed to this, all the patents go into this pool. And as long as you all agree to use these minimum set of conditions, then you can use all of these, right? And they start to become what's called standard essential patents. And there are actually efforts within 3D printing to make this stuff happen. So Microsoft is leading an effort to create a standard file format. And this is
Is it 3MF?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So they created the 3MF consortium, which they said, all right, we have a bunch of different companies that are going to basically try to figure out what is better than STLs, right? That solve all the problems, non-manifold surfaces, and
Yeah, STLs kind of suck.
All right, exactly, because they were even back in like the 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, it stands
like
for
that, right?
Standard Tessellation License, but now we just call it stereolithography. It is a garbage. It takes your gorgeous CAD model and just triangulates the shit out of it.
Turns it to triangles.
Yeah. So you and yeah, Thomas, seriously, we can put all this nice time into making a sphere. Won't be a sphere anymore. Now, to the credit of an STL file, the 3D printer can't make a perfect sphere anyway, so it doesn't matter. But yes, the 3MF is awesome. And when Prusa announced it, I'm like, well, that was a 3MF file. And then we looked into it, I'm like, oh shit. Oh, I like this. Because now Windows natively supports viewing 3MF files in thumbnails. It natively supports viewing 3MF files in their 3D Builder. Their 3D Builder can export 3MF files, and all the major CAD programs can export 3MF. I don't know if Fusion can yet. Can Fusion? Does anyone know if Fusion 360 can export 3MF
Autodesk
yet?
can, so I would assume that Fusion can.
I wonder if Blender can.
I'm sure Blender can. It's open source.
I'm just incredibly
Export or
curious.
import, Grant?
Yes.
All right, so the question is, 3MF can do a lot. that
Yes,
STL
it
couldn't
can do
before.
it. It can do it.
And why can all these software packages now import and export, presumably, 3MF and not run into any sort of patent issues with, all right, well, we can only do this under a license from Microsoft or some other. No, because the answer is they all got together and said, all right, here, let's figure out what 3MF is supposed to be. Let's develop a standard around it. And let's make that, even though we're going to patent it, we're going to say anybody can use all those patents as long as they importable, exportable. And they don't do the embrace, extend, extinguish thing of like, now it's our version of 3MF. It only works on our software and our print, all that garbage, right? None of that happens because there's an industry consortium around 3MF.
Yeah, you look at like Formlabs. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, this sounds a lot like SEMI in the semiconductor industry. It's another consortium of companies sort of setting the standards for what they do.
Well, and then you look at companies like Formlabs, and Formlabs has arguably the greatest software for SLA, for the resin-based printers. It is, okay, well, until you hit EnvisionTech, Formlabs has the best software. So under 15 grand, Formlabs has the best software out there for it. But their machines run .form, F-O-R-M. It is a proprietary language. Their software does not accept exports of any other format, so they've locked it in. Now, I just don't like Formlabs. We have a bit of a sordid past. I believe that this move for them is great. Initially, I'm upset about it, but that was before Prusa came out with a solution. Prusa has Prusa Slicer that can now work, since it's open source, can now work with photon files. It can't export photon files. There's a workaround for it, but it works with all 3D printers. Whereas Formlabs says, no, stay in our ecosystem. But Formlabs did something interesting. Starting with the Form 2 and going out, they have an open mode, which allows you to use third-party resins, third-party materials. It does remove some of the features, like the Form 2 and the Form 3 both have wipers that go across the plate to stir up the resin, and to make sure there's no garbage stuck to the film. That is deactivated in open mode. Now, what they also don't tell you is you can just refill the bottles. The RFID tags don't actually tell the machine how much
If it's-
material is in it. Just tells you what material is in it. I'm not telling you to do that because that would be wrong. But if you're out there with a Formlabs printer, you can try it. Literally, I heard that from like people at Formlabs. So I look at it and say, I owned a Formlabs for 2 minutes. That's a long story that I don't want to get into. But they're trying. I see both sides of their coin, right? They don't want this software that they've put ostensibly hundreds of thousands of dollars into developing to be used on $200 printers for nothing. They want to lock it into their system, but they're going to say, we know our consumables are expensive. We don't disagree with you. If you want reasonably guaranteed quality, you'll buy our materials. If you are a business, you'll probably buy our materials because you don't want to, fiddle around and screw with it. But if you are a hobbyist that just wants the bigger build volume, or you want, the use of the software and you want to mess around with materials, go ahead. You'll lose a couple of features, but that's okay. And I look at that, that's a good compromise, right? That's a really good compromise. We need more of those. But what happens is Stratasys and 3D Systems say, no, sorry, bruh, pay the money or get the hell out. So what happens are companies find ways to crack the chips. The Fortis chip has been cracked for a couple of years now. The Cubified chips were cracked within like 6 months. And part of me wonders, do they even try that hard? Or do they deliberately make it easy to crack? I don't know. But you can crack them, so you can load your own filament, reflash it with however much material you put on there, and continue printing. Of course, that voids whatever warranty you might have, but if you're not handling a warranty anymore, go ahead. There are companies out there... Huh?
I was just going to say, I guess the thing, I don't see the companies seeing I think in the long run, there are way fewer people who will take the time to crack the chip to do all of these home improvements to their product, rather than just I'm the kind of person that would never do that, and I will always just buy straight up because I don't care. I'd rather pay more money for the convenience. And so I think there's many fewer people that even if the chip is easy to crack, their concern is not those people at all. Their concern is just the money they'll be making off the people who don't want to crack the chip or don't even know why they would,
And so, David, the issue that we see here is we have this gap between makers that say patents bad, the professionals that say I can take them or leave them, and the professionals that say all patents all the time. It's similar to politics in the United States right now, where you're either one or the other, and you can't talk to each other because no one gets along when you're talking about politics or religion. So how do we get these people in a room, lock the door, and say, until you all come to an agreement, we're not feeding you, and deal with it? Because that seems like that's what we need. We know that Stratasys and 3D Systems aren't going to show up anyways, and they're going to talk about how they made everything happen when it's all over. But how do we get... I think HP would actually be open to having these discussions. HP from the beginning has talked about you being able to use your own powder, your own nylon powder. You have to buy their ink. It's HP after all. You have to buy their ink. But you can use your own powder. Well, truth be told, they're not selling the powder for much more than what you can buy it for. They're selling it for, I think it was a penny an ounce more than what you can buy it for. Now, when you're buying it by the Gaylord, which is a pallet worth of powder, not Elton John, pallet worth of powder, that adds up to a lot. Yeah, that's a good one. Give it to me. Come on. Laugh at that joke. Come on.
I wasn't going to touch
it. It adds up to a lot of money. You're talking about a couple $100. For some people, it's the ease of ordering, but we have a couple of clients that we work with that literally buy nylon powder by the train car, because that's a measurable unit that you can apparently buy nylon powder by. You can buy it by a train car. And I'm told you use a big vacuum to get it out of the train car. You put it into your own system, you sift it and clean it, and it's perfect. I'm like, well, how much do you pay for that? I said, you don't want to know how cheap it is.
So, I mean, if you're talking about people getting together in an industry, I feel like the first step is like legitimately this conversation, right, with the right people. It's talking to a patent attorney who has an interest in this industry and who also has very relevant information coming from other industries that have either come into the same issues or are doing it better already by talking to each other. And in the end, these people are probably, making a comparable or more amount of money when they're working together rather than just
It's economies of scale, baby.
Yeah.
So when I think the answer is just like education, right? Like educating, because the 3D printing industry, startups are still considered startups even 10 years into being a business.
Yep.
And so 3D printing industry,
Don't remind me.
as like an industry, not being that old, it has a lot to learn from the industries that came prior, especially with the right people who are aware of these kinds of things, because it's not the first thing that come to mind for people who want to make printers, right?
Right.
The first thing on their mind is making the printer part.
Now, here to me is kind of like this ideal situation. Prusa puts QR codes on every one of their spools to tell you their standard deviation and to show you, where your filament changes in terms of its diameter.
Mm-hmm.
If I had a scanner, I could scan that QR code and tell the Prusa, hey, I'm running this spool. I can put the spool on a scale. It can detect how much of the filament's been used. And so it knows precisely in the loop where it is, and it will adjust my flow rate based on that. I will gladly pay the premium of Prusament without a shadow, because then you will literally get perfect prints. And I've said this from the beginning. That to me is a way where we have DRM. If you don't want to use it, you don't have to. They're already doing it. So all you need is a software update. Now, the Mark 3S, impossible to do it because it's only an 8-bit board. But the 32-bit board on the Mini, that's actually possible. And all you need is a cell phone or some sort of QR scanner that you can utilize. And now all of a sudden you have a realm where DRM can play with open source and everybody wins. Now, I would like to state, for the record, that's my damn idea. Now, of course, we've put it out there, so this does make it public domain. I do not believe we can patent it, but that also means none of you patent trolls can do it either. So I'm okay with this.
If you're the first one to talk about it publicly, you can still file a patent application on it within a year of publicizing.
How do you prove it?
Well, I mean, you have to. It's not up to you to prove that you were the first one to invent it. It's up to the examiner to find prior art that says you worked, right? And then once you get the patent, it's up to whoever you're accusing to come up with the prior art that says, no, you worked, right?
Maybe we need to have a meeting after this. Because I love this idea, and it's like, and I think it's the seat belt. The seat belt was one of those where the guy had the patent, but he said, you know what? Everybody can use it for free because the safety is worth more to me than the money. And I'm pretty sure the dude died like penniless. He lost everything he had. Maybe I'm thinking of the wrong story. There's a whole movie about this. The guy that invented the Tad, can you look it up? The movie about
I'm doing it
the
now.
inventing of the
seatbelt movie.
It's a really
There's
good
a movie about the guy who invented the seatbelt.
Yes.
It's literally called Fasten Your Seatbelt.
I think. I don't know.
Okay. Never mind.
I'm sorry, dude. I was gonna say what kind of like 2-bit
No.
Lifetime producer came up with that title? Because good lord,
hold on.
it just feels like a disservice to the poor man's memory to make the title of your cool movie
inventor.
Fasten Your Seatbelt. Are you kidding?
No, that's a different movie actually.
Jeez. Okay, thank goodness, because I was
Flash
like,
of
oh
Genius.
no.
Yes, that's
Flash
it.
of
Flash of
Genius.
Genius. Yes.
See, that is far better and something that I would be proud to.
If you are an inventor, watch that movie. It's a great movie, and it will. Dude, that movie will get you so fired up for wanting to invent, and then you have to deal with the USPTO. So just watch it when you're dealing with the USPTO. It should help you through the God, they suck.
If we could rename that movie though, and we made it just as bad as Fasten Your Seatbelts, it could be like Unfasten Your Genius
Actually,
or
this
something.
is about-
That would be like a great awful name.
This
for that
movie's
movie.
about the guy who invented intermittent windshield wipers.
Oh, it's the windshield wipers. Okay, well,
Sorry.
Flash Genius is still the movie I was talking about.
Oh,
Clearly, I was wrong.
There's a different dude, Niels Bolin.
It's still a great movie, by the way. I've had too many head injuries, okay? My memory's not great. It should not be trusted in a court of law. I just went on record saying that. Is that bad? I think that's bad. I don't care. You can look up my medical records. But I want to remove this stigma because even I get it sometimes, right? I find myself looking for alternatives to E3D hot end socks because they're like $6 a piece or $3 a piece, and you break them, like you look at them the wrong way, the damn things just tear apart. Now, of course, it's an open source community, so you can just go print the mold and make it yourself. Ultimately, that's what we did. But like Brad, I was over at his place helping him, and Brad was on episode 10, if anyone's wondering who Brad is. Brad is a Make-A-Wish recipient. We talked all about him and him becoming a maker. It was really cool. I apologize. If you watched the YouTube video, I apologize. We did not know about the audio back then. We have figured it out now. Just turn your volume up. I'm sorry. But he got a copperhead, a Slice Engineering copperhead. There are no socks for them. And the problem is when you blow tons of air at them, they cool way down. So online, someone made a mold for it. So I brought over my red RTV and we made our own socks while I was over there. I made him a pair of socks.
Cute.
And it works great. He can now run his copperhead at crazy fast speeds because it can maintain its temperature. That's a great level of open source to me. I don't think Slice offers socks yet, so meh. Someone like reverse engineered it. But you look at like what E3D did with the Hermes and the Hermera. You must have been watching that and enjoying that. Were you, David?
Yes.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, the day before the launch of the E3D Hermes, the purse bag company, filed for trademark infringement or copyright infringement, one of the two. And E3D said, really? You're really doing this to us the day before our launch? Hermes saw this coming and they just waited. Now, there is something to be said about that. That's a baller move, but it's a bit of, you're using rule number 2. There are 2 rules in life. This is your life lessons for the day, kids. Rule number 1, don't be a dick. Rule number 2, if you're going to be a dick, be a big one. Hermes chose rule number 2. And so E3D said, we're going to name it the Hermera. It's Hermes' daughter or wife. I believe it was his daughter. And it's a middle finger. And there are still real Hermes out there, and they joke about it. But that could have cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars. And all E3D was doing was just calling it a name that they wanted to call it. It had nothing.
Of a Greek god that's been around since, 2000 BC. So that's shitty.
But it's also really silly because there's no way that trademark would be enforced. So
how?
Let me give you my general summary about this. So copyright law is really strange, and by strange I mean there's a lot of like parts of copyright law that don't make any sense whatsoever in terms of how we actually use artistic works right now. Like when you Google a website and you get thumbnails, theoretically those thumbnails are taken from somebody else and they violate copyright. It's very strange. The Digital Millennium Copyright Act is a very strange piece of legislation, right? Doesn't match reality at all, right? Patents are much closer. Trademarks are even closer than that. Trademarks are very practical. Now, the reason I point that out is that in this case, the whole point of trademark enforcement is to say, would consumers be confused if they thought that company A, using this particular phrase, if consumers would be confused that product is somehow related with company B's product, right? Like if you were to offer a tablet and call it an eye slate, does that remind you of anything? Would you think that? Yeah, okay. So if you thought that like people generally in the field would be confused and think, oh, this is the newest Apple product or whatever, right? You're basically unfairly using a lot of the work that Apple's done to develop this iPad, right? How many people who would buy a Hermes hot end would think it has anything to do with a luxury purse? Zero.
Literally
right?
zero.
There is, okay, all right. There is no way that trademark would be enforceable because trademarks are only enforceable in that realm of what's confusing, right? Like you can't open a hamburger restaurant and call something, like a big Mickey or something, right? That because people are going to be confused. It's
Well,
you're trying to.
You're gonna hurt two trademarks of copyrights on that one.
Yeah. The
And
mouse
one of them-
is coming for you.
And see, it's not McDonald's I'm worried about.
Yeah.
I'm worried
Disney has
about
more
the
money than
overlord.
God.
Yeah,
That's-
but yeah, I mean, actually, we talk a lot about that in the design industry in general because we work in trademarks. I mean, that's kind of like one of our biggest things that we do. We create them and we help, make sure we're not violating other trademarks and other companies.
Mhm.
And a lot of the conversations that we get into is, oh, I want to call my company this, but this person already has it. And we get to tell people, well, no, because that's a clothing company and you're a this company and there's just no way you guys
That
will
it's gonna
ever
be
even
confused.
cross business. So
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about it. And if you did worry about it, nothing holds up because you guys are in different fields and that's allowed. It's like the burger joint that is called for the weirdest argument ever. If you had a burger joint called Android and then you have the phone Android, who in their right mind would think, and then there's all the branding things that would be different.
Lawyers, that's
same
who.
logo
Sorry,
or whatever.
David.
But man, it's just like, I mean, we tell people that all the time because it's the idea of, it's the whole, is there competition between these companies directly in that sense?
Mhm.
And if there isn't, then it's pretty safe to say you can use those names and whatever.
Yeah.
But-
So in this case, they probably decided that like changing the name from Hermes to something else was, it was a good PR move because it, created this great story.
Oh yeah,
And made it
it's a
look like
great
agile.
story.
And they
Made
could
the other
just
company look like
sidestep.
dicks.
It's
There you go.
Hermes. They're literally, that's their brand. Their brand is not in doing the right thing. Their brand is not in utilizing proper 100% sustainable materials. Their brand is not you buy a purse from us, we give another one to needy kids. No, their brand is F you, pay me. So you can look cool on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
No one friggin' cares about that. Well, okay, no one with my income level cares about that. I'm like, who's Hermes? And then I'm like, oh, Hermes, the bag designer.
Typically, people in the 3D printing industry don't care about that, which is just another reason to say that there's no reason that those two should ever get mixed up.
I think ultimately it ended up being good press for E3D because it got picked up by every major news, like 3D news company that normally wouldn't care about a new drop from E3D. Oh, they're replacing the Titan Arrow with the Hermes. Who the hell cares? Nobody.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like E3D in legal battle with premium leather brand Hermes. That's news, man. And don't get me wrong, the Hermera is an awesome hot end. I've had the opportunity to actually hold one, which says a lot because most people haven't. They've had incredibly difficult times getting them out to people. And they're really, really cool hot ends. I want to get one day. Well, it is an extruder that you can add a hot end onto. But I want to get one day, but that may not come for a long time. But, that's the kind of thing that gives people bad taste. It's how Stratasys just boned MakerBot as soon as they bought it, used it for nothing other than Google's search results. And now what happens is people buy the new MakerBot method or whatever the hell they're calling it these days. They have a crappy experience. They call companies like 3D Musketeers and they bitch to me like it's my fault. Because clearly I run MakerBot.
So I gotta say, there is, I just went to a few websites, but there's one thing that Hermes bags share in common with 3D printers, and it is that they are expensive. And that's pretty much it. Like, you could buy a Prusa ready-made in-box, shipped to your house, and filament by like the tons, and you would still be coming in under than most of these bags.
All right,
And
just
then you could
give me a price. How much is an average Hermes bag that you're looking at?
The average is 2.5K.
Excuse me?
Yeah, that's where
For
they're
a
at.
bag.
So
Excuse me.
and I mean, a lot of them are breaking the $4,000 mark as well. So you can, the moral of the story is here, you can buy a 3D printer
No, I think the moral of the story is I am in the wrong damn business.
My first awareness of Hermes was it not actually handbags. It was the Apple Watch wristband, because Apple came out with an Hermes wristband that was like $900 or something. It was crazy overpriced. It was literally the strap for the watch. It had nothing to do with electronics, except it connected to the electronics and the brand name. Right?
But David, don't you want to be flexing on them haters with your Hermes watch band? Because everyone's gonna know it.
I don't even have an Instagram account, let alone would be posting something on there. So yeah, I totally not my field.
Same. Yeah, the only Instagram that I have is for the company. The only Twitter I have is for the company. I do have a personal Facebook, but I hate it a lot.
Has all those social medias because I have.
You have to.
It's my job to make him have them.
This is true. That is absolutely accurate. It is Thomas's job to be responsible for all of this. But it is interesting. I know Hermes because they do interiors for cars. So they do like Maybach and some high-end custom interiors for cars. Where, look, you're already spending $1 million on the car. Who the hell cares about another 30 grand, all right? I mean, geez, that's like adding, cheap rental wheels to a brand new, Hyundai, percentage price wise. And then you can say that, I think the kids call it the drip. Is that right, Thomas?
You would have drip. Yeah.
I feel like Hank Hill.
You would have drip.
I think they call it the drip.
The drip. Bobby.
If you had an Hermes interior.
David, we talked long enough that you should have expected this kind of shit, okay?
I'm good with it. Keep going.
You'd be dripping, Grant. That's what you'd be doing.
Yeah? See, when I hear that things are dripping, I say, go get the Teflon tape or, shut off the water because that's a leak. And leaks are bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes me think that someone's covered in diamonds, so...
I mean, yes, if you covered somebody in diamonds, they might be dripping because diamonds are very sharp and will cut you.
Yeah. That's a good...
And then does that make it a blood diamond?
No, very different. I feel like I don't know if you would have any of this on hand, but if you just wanted to talk about it, David, I'm curious as to like what you're making. Like, what are you doing with your printers?
Yeah, what are you
from a day to day, and like, what do you like to make on them?
I am happy to share. So, most of my printing is functional. I've made a lot of widgets around the house and things like that. My wife has an aquarium scraper that's basically an exposed razor blade. She's like, I need a cover for this so our 3-year-old doesn't pick it up and start going around the house and poking his little brother. Right?
Yikes.
So just yesterday I made it was just a block, and I hopped on Tinkercad and made an invisible block and some grommets that were the right shape, and then a big block that went around it, and she popped it right up. Like, first, I was so proud. First draft came right off the printer. She popped down. She's like, "This is perfect."
Yes.
Like, I could round the corners. I could no. Just I'll keep it.
It's
okay, great.
fine as is.
Yes.
Sand them.
So lots of simple things like that, but also some more complex things. So for my engineering degree, I had a bunch of projects that required engineering teams to get together and everything. And I was, in addition to doing a lot of electronics and a lot of the software, because software is my primary background, I do a ton of Python and machine learning. I was also doing a lot of 3D printing. So I designed a few different parts. Actually, I've got, let's see.
I can see us in the reflection.
3D printed. This is actually a door that had a camera embedded in it. So it was face activated. If your face is registered, then it pops up in the door. It's got a solenoid lock and such. This took a bunch of different drafts to get all the different parts correctly lined up and everything. But a bunch of things like that.
That was a gorgeous print. That looks so good.
It's because he was using a Prusa 3D printer.
Exactly.
Yes.
And we are not sponsored by Prusa, but we should be.
Hit
us up,
love
Joe.
Prusa printers. I'll just throw that out there. Yes.
Do
most of it's functional.
Do you have a resolution on your other Prusa?
I do not. I'm still waiting for USPS to decide whether or not they want to pay out on the insurance claim from having shipping, which is a long story that I'll leave for another podcast.
But see, this is the cool thing. He's going to likely get it back one way or another. If he gets a check, great. Maybe he'll just buy another one. But if he doesn't, he's going to get a broken printer. And, well, it's open source. You can make all the parts. And, this is the benefit of having cheap open source. You can go buy generic LM8UU ball bearings and slides now. Prusa is using Misumi, so I do recommend you buy the Misumi ones. They are much better than the cheap ones you'll get from Amazon. But you don't have to. And that's what makes this industry so cool. You know, making is fun.
I gotta say,
It
I
really
love
is.
this. I love also seeing, you know, I talked earlier about how everyone's backgrounds in this industry can be wildly different for what you would use 3D printing for. And I think even if we were just going to compare, like, you know, Billy and her practice of making, like, I mean, she makes all sorts of stuff, but
She used to
I'll
work in
reference
construction, dude.
She makes
She knows what
her
she's
making
doing.
like cosplay items and
Yep.
things like that. I think is great and super cool. And then we have like a complete other side where David has a computer science background and also electronics. So he's like, okay, I'm making a thing that I'm already thinking ahead of embedding electronics and programming systems into, which
Mhm.
I hadn't seen. You know, I know they exist, but I haven't seen or talked to someone who's done that before. And so that's just super cool. And for me, it would be making silly, weird things. So
Yes.
it's like all incredibly cool ways to use the
For
actual,
reference, David, behind Thomas, all that art he made. So yeah, it's all ridiculous. It's all hilarious, and that's Thomas in a nutshell.
That's my brand.
Love
But
it.
yeah, I just think that's so super cool because based on, and I mean, Tad does similar things too. I'd say a lot of Tad's prints are functional in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
and they're the most the things you would not think about the most, like bag clips and door stops.
Oh, yeah, I
and a
made
way to
bag
hang your
clips.
mask, and like just cool like stuff that I wouldn't think about,
just
but I would
printed,
otherwise have to be like, better go to Target and get some bag clips, or I
I'm
could
gonna be putting
print
some
them.
accessories in my car, and I just printed some trim pry bars, you know, so I don't
Yeah,
bust
so
anything.
good.
Nice.
Yeah.
And that's the
This
cool
is why
thing.
everybody needs one of these things, right?
Exactly.
Everybody should have a 3D printer.
Well, seeing Tad print things that were just like, oh dang it, like I don't have a small plastic wrench that comes with IKEA furniture, and I
Yeah.
really need one right now. It would be like, okay, I'll just make the furniture like, you know, tomorrow, and I'll just throw on the printer to make me a few wrenches that I can just
Right.
use for whenever, because you know it's stuff like that, and I'm like, dang, you know, when I have a home, I would want a 3D printer because it almost starts to feel to me like a cheaper way for me to get some of those things. you
Yeah,
know?
because a lot of the times, if you only need like one thing, it's often not worth it to go to the hardware store. I'm finding.
No.
I could just
Well, 'cause
make it.
You'd have to buy it in like a little, you know, bag of a few of them, and it's like, no,
Yeah.
I need one, and
I just need one. I don't want 10 that I'm never going to use.
Well, and you know, you don't even have to be especially talented or with an engineering background like myself to just go on the internet and search bag clip and then print the bag clip. You know,
Yes.
it can be as simple as that, which is so awesome. Like,
hmm
so cool.
Exactly. Well, and then if I ever have to replace something that I can't come by easily or is expensive, I mean, luckily having an engineering background, I could reverse engineer it easily. But, you know, that's a possibility for people too. Sometimes something breaks and there isn't a replacement that you could buy.
Yeah.
This is like part of my envisioned future of 3D printing is that you buy a product from the store and you got a model number and you put that model number in Thingiverse and you get 1,000 different spare parts that either the manufacturer came up with it. So if you lose the cap or something, you can just go print one, or people have just reverse engineered it.
Yeah. I mean, that's
my
already
wife-
largely the case.
Yeah. My wife had a list of 3D printing projects for me as I was building the printer.
You
she's like,
had a
"This is what I
honeydew
need."
list for 3D
I
printing?
Yes.
absolutely did.
Damn it.
And then just
Relationship
scraper was one of
goals.
This is true. Shit. Damn it, my
I
girlfriend's out. Otherwise, I'd tell her.
I absolutely love that because it's like that same idea of like, oh, my husband or my spouse knows how to do woodworking, and like, oh, we sure need to build that deck. But now it's like, if it's a 3D printer, it's like, oh yeah, I can do that. Just like beep, boop, boop. Okay, like go do something else for a while.
Remind me in
Oh,
2
so
hours.
good.
My wife has this arrow garden.
Send
It's a little
LeBaron
canister that autofills the water and
invoice to
everything, but she
Car Guy.
lost the cover for it. There's like this little like kind of rhombus shaped insert that covers the water port. She's like, I lost it. Okay, so I took a photo of it and I stuck that photo. I SVG'd it, dropped it into Tinkercad.
Just traced it?
Yeah, no, I didn't even trace it. I just took a photo and just like that's the shape,
Extruded
right?
it?
Because Yeah, because there were curves,
Yeah.
right? And I was like, curves are a little hard to get right. So no, just a photo. I
believe
dropped it in as extrusion,
curves.
printed it. It was great.
Curves are hard, but as a graphic designer and 5 years of school doing that, we're great at curves. But it takes 5 years to get good at curves and making them.
Don't doubt that at all.
If anyone ever feels bad about using a pen tool or doing curves in any program, you are certainly not alone. It took people who are good at it hours, and I mean like 1,000-hour kind of realm of just moving those handles around. Like it's not an easy thing. Yeah.
I love it. I'm excited to see where this industry goes. Yeah, David, with your best guess, 1 year from now, because who the hell knows what's going to happen in the world in 1 year, but where do you think the 3D printing industry is heading next year, 2021? What's going to happen?
2021. I want to say that from people having been isolating in place, and we're not at the end of that path anymore. I think people have been home more, and I think they're looking at home projects, and I think 3D printing will be one of those things that they're like, this is interesting. So I think that this may end up promoting maybe the consumer level awareness and interest. So maybe there will be more of a groundswell of mainstream support of this, plus just the word spreads. The 3D printing is great, and all the stuff we've been talking about you can do, right? So I think that there will be more of a general public interest in 3D printing and acquiring a 3D printer and seeing where it goes. So I think you're going to see printers becoming simpler to use and probably more available. And hopefully it's not just cheap knockoffs on Amazon.
Thank you.
It's quality printers from quality manufacturers.
Like Prusa.
Please give us a sponsorship, please.
I think that's a very true statement though, because I think 3D printing, unlike a lot of things, I mean, 3D printing does take its amount of learning and training in the beginning, like many things. But I'd say if you were to compare that to a home project, that would be closer to traditionally, like, I'm going to build a table, or I'm going to, I'm going to finally build that deck.
There's
or
much
whatever.
less of a learning curve. Yeah.
I mean, the barrier to entry is far lower for supplies and everything, because it's a computer program. And I mean, we're at a point.
You don't actually have to do it yourself. You just have to tell it what to do.
We're at a point in history where, most everyone has a home computer, which is even weird to say home computer anymore.
Yeah.
But, everyone's got a computer.
They carry one in their pockets.
Well, very basically how to use it. So I wouldn't even be surprised if you.
Most wristwatches can run the damn space shuttle.
Yeah, you could plug in a phone to a 3D printer with a model and then pull it off of there, or there's a Bluetooth support of sending.
Yeah, they already have Wi-Fi support. You can set up a Raspberry Pi server where you could push the.
That's what I'm saying.
So
like
cool.
if I could airdrop from my iPhone to a Prusa and just say, oh, hey, 3D model, which I can look at natively on my phone already, and just send it. It's like, I can already do that from my phone to my printer in my house if I want to print a document. So the next step isn't that far, and it's like so cool because it's so accessible.
I love how he said the next step is not that far, does not understand an iota of the amount of coding it takes to do that.
I am at my very, very beginning stages of learning Python, so I think you're right about that.
But you don't even need a wit of programming knowledge. You go to Thingiverse. I don't know if you guys have noticed that Thingiverse is now 1,000 times better over the
Whoa. Hey, this is a Prusa podcast. We go to prusaprinters.org.
Fair enough. All right, so other printing services that have models that are accessible, you don't need to know.
They're better than it used to be.
They're so searchable. Like the search, you get the search results there.
Yeah,
now sponsored for some. Yeah, that's the new change, I think. But much more accessible, and there are thousands and thousands of models. You download, print, done.
Yeah,
and between them and GrabCAD, I think I'm good. And
even if you didn't have a way to view said thing natively on your computer, the website can natively view 3D models, and you can actually look at them in all XYZ spaces. So you can just download the file and be like, I know that will look like this.
Prusa just got that feature. They just got it.
Good.
Like yesterday got it.
Yeah. I do it all the time when I'm making renders for clients and things in 3D. I go to those places all the time because then I just have to texture them and light them, and then I'm good to go. It's
Although
great.
I will say we got a request to print a very large middle finger
Yeah.
and I cannot find a good model of a middle finger. And this is stupid.
I can make one for you. It'll be my hand though. I can make it like I'll do it today. I will. That sounds hilarious. I can make a 3D model that is pretty good with my iPhone. And then
you
I can
have the
clean
new
it up
iPhone
and we'll
12
have it.
Pro?
You don't need it because they've got LiDAR in the phones in the 10s. They've had LiDAR sensors in iPhones since iPhone 10 in the front-facing camera for facial recognition.
Probably just was not very well utilized.
I'll be curious to see how well that comes out, but I've got a buddy.
I made a convincing and good 3D model of my whole head using that LiDAR sensor, and it was hilarious. It was so good. It's the
I don't
power.
know,
It's the
man.
future, baby. It's the future.
The future, he says. The future friggin' scares the shit out of me.
This is one step closer
You're,
to
you're like
singularity.
Squidward and SpongeBob. Future. Remember that episode? No.
Yes. Yes.
Well, you do. Does Grant?
No.
Grant.
He doesn't know. He doesn't know.
The
Yeah.
better 3/4 rags on me too, because she and her sister quote it all the damn time, and I don't know, man. Okay, for the past 10 years of my life, anything related to pop culture has gone over my head faster than you can say gone over your head.
I'm that way
Your
with
Christmas-
music.
The only
your Christmas
thing-
present, Grant, is just going to be a VHS of this first season of SpongeBob. I tell you, I'm going to find
VHS.
it.
I
Yeah,
don't actually have a VHS player, Thomas.
I was betting that you wouldn't, just so that you would be holding it, and you'd be like, "What do I do?"
Does it come in one of those like white foam things that you used to get the Disney ones in? What the hell were those called?
Oh, the plastic ones?
Yeah. They have like that
VHS
distinct
Cheap cases.
cracking noise when you open it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, those are the worst. Yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
The cardboard sleeve was better.
Eh. And look, I'm glad that we went over to digital, and I am excited to see what happens. I don't know where this. I honestly do not know where this industry is going to go. I have to agree with David. I hope we move away from the suicidal race to the bottom. I hope we start holding people accountable. I hope that we can get a consortium together where we can say, this whole fighting thing, it's not working. Except when you look at profit numbers, it is, and that's the problem. But for them to say we could do more if we work together. Now, so help me God, if they get together and they do it and they just collude against the industry and say, oh, screw them, we're all gonna raise prices, because I can see some of those sons of guns getting into a room saying, nah, man, we ain't gotta work together, but we can all
Yeah.
raise our prices.
Collusion
I was gonna
only
say, there
works
is-
among a small group of players, right? The more you add, the more it breaks down, right? Because somebody's going to cheat. That is like antitrust. That's what they teach you in antitrust law class in law school day one. Collusion only works as long as it's a small group.
It has to be mutually assured destruction scenario. As soon as it becomes not mutually assured destruction, you've got a problem. Yeah.
So I want to answer something that Thomas said earlier, which is what's the first step? Actually, you both kind of got to this. The first step is really talking about this, right? Things like this podcast. We're talking about what the options are, saying like, look, it doesn't have to be these two extremes. It's not walled garden or wilderness. There's 1,000 different variations in the middle, many of which are going to be good for everybody and will protect, I think, the long-term health of this entire industry, right? So talking about it and breaking down some of these misconceptions. I mean, it kills me to see some things like Joseph Prusa tweeting a while ago, I've read that you patented PieMaker. Can you tell us more? Nobody patents PieMaker. There's no patent for what I claim is PieMaker. That's not how patents work. There's so many misconceptions about how patents work, where the state is, like how patents can fit into the industry. I think there has to be a solid conversation to get people into a room and talk about what the options are, right? And talk about really how patents work, break down a lot of these misconceptions, and also talk about there are these existential threats to this industry, the way that it is right now, from the top, from the bottom, from other people just coming in on the side and patenting whatever they want and saying that's our wall garden, that's it, right? Patents can be the solution if they're used in the right way. They can help. They can help cooperation. They can help competition. They can not jack up prices, but just make sure that things work together. It's a public garden. It's not like a walled garden It's not the wilderness.
There's a
There are
little
options.
admission fee, okay, but it's not
Yeah.
10 grand a year. Like I said, you know, we have a couple of suppliers right now for filament. We normally buy from Atomic. That's our main supplier, but we are buying more from Zyotech as we see some customers are more concerned about price than they are about quality. Zyotech, code 3DM for 15% off. See, just throw them in there. It's like ldtstore.com. But we don't mind paying that extra premium because it comes with a benefit. If Prusa took their $30 spools, delivered about $30 a piece, raised them to 35, and enabled that QR code to interact with the machine every day of the week, every day of the week, we would buy that without missing a beat. I wouldn't care because the price increase is irrelevant. It is irrelevant for the value that you get out of it. And it's got to be what they're working toward. Why the hell else would they be this transparent?
Yeah. They wouldn't be, you know, making a
No one
big
needs to see the
CSV of
graph.
all that. Yeah. They wouldn't be making that without going in that direction. That's too much effort.
It's cool. Don't get me wrong. I just don't see their end game. I mean, well, okay, I see their end game. It's vertical integration. That's their end game. But, you know, just like how, I don't know, is their new hot end that they're using on the Mini, is that on their GitHub yet? I don't know if it is. It's all E3D compatible, but it's the heat sink that's the special thing, because that's completely different. I'll have to look, but they're relying on the fact that most of the people that need something from them are going to make it themselves, and that the copies, you know, you have your brand loyalty. And yeah, for the most part, a lot of us do, right? We're loyal to Prusa because, well, honestly, he's been loyal to the consumers. He's made it right many times. Now, I think nobody would complain if Prusa could get their shipping together and their production together, but as someone that also owns a company that 3D prints things, because don't forget, a lot of what Prusa does is make printers on printers. Yo, dog. You can't like get 300 extra printers for 2 weeks. That's not how that works. You have to build a backlog because that backlog is going to make up for the weeks where you get 100 sales instead of 200 sales. And the weeks where you get 1,000 sales, well, hopefully you've been printing ahead. And, you know, it does kind of suck. Like, we bought 4 minis on Black Friday through Prusa. We're not going to get them until February. I don't see it happening until February. And that sucks because that's $1,600 of my money, well, company's money, out in the ether. Not in my bank account. Mind you, I shouldn't be trusted to do anything with it anyways, other than put it in Ally and forget about it. But, you know, that is kind of tough. I wish Prusa would do like a 50-50, right? 50 up front to secure your spot in line, and then 50% when it ships. That, to me, makes more sense, but I recognize their desire, because especially with the minis, dude, they must be running razor-thin margins. Razor-thin. And for them to do all this upfront work to get money at the time of shipping, that'd be kind of tough. So, I get that. I do. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, Tad, what do you think? Where's this industry going?
I think it's about where you guys are saying. But one of the things that worries me is like we've been saying, that there is the chance that some bad actor is just going to swoop in and have a chilling effect on it.
How do we
And
stop that? Or how do
Yeah.
we... there's got to be a way, David. How do we keep this from becoming a potential threat?
It's the industry consortium model. It's
Okay.
The top 10 companies that are leading the charge in terms of 3D printing get together and say, what are the innovations that we've come up with that define what the next generation of 3D printers is going to include? What do they have to have in order to keep up with the state of the art? Patent all that stuff, contribute all that stuff to one industry consortium that's going to say, anybody can use this as long as they are a good actor, and define what that means, right? This is how Wi-Fi works. This is how many industries work that try to ensure compatibility, right? And try to ensure competition without having, you know, just a wilderness where that sort of stuff can happen. So I think that's the model that needs to be discussed, is have the next generation of technology, contribute all that to an industry consortium group, and say anybody can use this as long as they comply with a certain set of minimum requirements, right? So this is called standard essential patents. It's very well known in industries like 5G. It's very well fleshed out legally as far as what's required, what the process is. I think it's something the 3D printing community needs to seriously consider.
I like it. I don't know. I think that's a good place to end it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, we solved it. We did it. That's it.
That's it.
Cold turkey,
no more
guys.
problems.
But it's-
we figured it out.
That's it. Answers there. I want to
Start
see
the white paper.
I want to see you in these Discord channels. I want to see you on the subreddits, David. I want to see you fighting for this, because I'm going to start fighting this good fight, because I agree. And I don't think anybody here that is listening or watching this is going to disagree. This is the right move. This is how companies can protect themselves. People can still get the value, but they also get more out of it, right? That's so ideal. This is why interviewing people like you, that is not only a maker but has a really interesting profession, or multiple professions, I guess. You are a jack of all trades and master of quite a few. It is so great for us, because we get to see something that we didn't. I never knew about this. I knew that there were something. I just figured it was just back alley collusion that ended up working well for the consumer in the end. But no, there's actually legal things for this that are truly beyond my level of schooling. So it's really interesting. I'm looking forward to it. Well, we hope you're looking forward to the future too.
I certainly am.
Well, you being everybody, and not just you, David, but everybody. Everybody. All the 15 listeners that we have. We got to start marketing, okay? I suck at marketing. Give me a break here. But as always, everyone...
Got a whole rollout coming.
Yeah, I know. TM, soon TM. That's us. Yeah. I've been working with the marketing team. Had a call earlier, but and we hope you guys continue to make awesome out there. And as always, please call your loved ones. It's the holiday season. If they haven't heard from you, what the hell are you doing? Call your loved ones. You don't know when that may not be able to be possible anymore. So please stay healthy out there. Keep socially distanced. Wear a damn mask. One day we should just do a podcast with masks on. Be hilarious. Anyways, guys, keep making awesome. I'm Grant. I got Tad off to, I guess this would be my right. Thomas is below me, and David, you are to the bottom right of me. It's been great having you on, David. Is there any places that we can find you that you want to tell people? This will be public.
Sure. I'm an attorney with Studebaker Brackett. If you search for that phrase, you'll get the website of our law firm. You can contact me. I'm on Reddit. I'm on Billy Rubin's Discord. I'm everywhere. So I would love to speak with you if you have any sort of interest, questions, concerns. I'd love to keep fighting the good fight. My interest here is to protect the long-term health of the 3D printing industry. I want to see this kind of thing happen for a long time to come.
Hell yeah. Take care, everyone. Have a good day.
Yep.